We're primarily a fuel ethanol producer. We also make several other products, including cattle feed, corn oil, syrup, and CO2 products. So those are the 5 products, if you will, that go out. We obviously use corn as our primary feedstock. We do use some other feedstocks when they're available at times, but several ingredients come in as well, from yeast to enzymes to nutrients for the plant to CIP chemicals to parts. And Kurt runs our maintenance department for us, and so all the inbound parts, motors, pumps, etc., comes in as well. But so we're about a 48 million gallon a year ethanol plant. We're one of 3 in the state, larger producers in the state. Coors and Anheuser-Busch also make a little bit of ethanol as well. So we produce about 400,000 tons of wet distillers grains a year. Corn oil, Kurt, we're about 27,000 pounds of corn oil a day. About 200 tons of CO2 products a day, and the syrup primarily goes out as our cattle on our wet distillers grain cattle feed as well. So as far as managing the supply chain, our plant managers, plant manager himself, Phil, and our process manager, Amanda, manage all the inbound ingredients that go into the process, if you will. We have a separate commodities manager that manages the inbound grain that we start with to produce our products. And so those are scheduled out well in advance usually. Oftentimes corn, like right now we're buying corn all the way into the spring of next year. So even farther out than that, it's available. You can buy it going out years if you want. We use natural gas in our process, and so we're actually looking at hedging and locking up natural gas for 2018. We're looking at that at this point as well. So a lot of how our business works, you can go out very long time periods and secure your needs for the supply chain as far as what you're going to need for inbound to produce the products that we need to produce and run our business. And so the outbound products go out primarily in truck and on a daily basis. So we're shipping about 16 trucks a day of ethanol out of here, 40 some trucks a day of wet distillers grain, several trucks of CO2 products, and we load corn oil into rail cars right now. We can ship it either way, and so we load one Kurt, every week. 5 days-ish, yeah.
5, 6 days.
Yeah, 5, 6 days we have a rail car corn oil going out, which is kind of neat. It's going down to the Gulf and primarily going overseas for biodiesel and renewable diesel production. So
does everything happen here at what we can see right now?
you'll see it all.
So why have you guys had problems in the past with ordering stuff? Is that why you order it so far in advance as opposed to like a month-to-month basis?
Yeah, I mean, some of it's month to month as well. Like corn is just, it depends on kind of the growing season. So some years where it's really, the supply is really tight, we stay a little closer hand to mouth on it. More recent years, we've had an abundant supply, so it's enabled us to go and lock in very good corn values going out in the future. And so that's why we do it. But yeah, we have a lot of the ingredients that come into the process, enzymes, yeast, the yeast nutrients, and even some of the CIP chemicals we use, and the different chemicals used for cleaning the plant are, you can buy them in bulk, so you can buy them month to month, or you can go out a quarter and buy a quarter of it. The bigger ingredients, more costly ingredients like enzymes and yeast, we can go out and purchase those under a service agreement that covers a whole year. So it's just more of okay, we have the agreement in place, and now we're scheduling the loads that we need to come in when they need to come in. So it's a lot of times it's price advantage to go buy bulk at times and buy farther out.
Have you ever had a time where you didn't order enough?
Yeah, we've been tight before. Obviously, the big one for us is being tight on corn. That's certainly happened. Not in recent years, but we've had that happen a few times in our history. And usually we can hit some emergency buttons and get stuff here where we've never had to actually take the plant completely down. I don't recall, Kurt,
No.
for not having enough ingredients coming in or supply coming in. But yeah, it can get interesting at times if it gets tight. But yeah, usually we have supply that's readily available that we can hit the panic button and get it here,
Good.
which is good to have. in
Yeah,
the back
very
pocket,
true.
by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Where do you get all your stuff from? Local? Or?
So yeah, I mean the feedstock, the corn comes from Colorado, and primarily Colorado, and it's kind of southwest Nebraska area, in that kind of panhandle area, and a little bit out of northwest Kansas as well. Just there's been a lot of supply of that in this area. We have in our history gotten corn all the way out from South Dakota via rail, and Minnesota and Iowa via rail before, but it hasn't been the case in recent years. There's been a lot of supply grown in this area. The farming traits are improving, so we're seeing more production locally. So we're buying more locally and regionally.
How long, when you get a shipment of corn, or can you store that before you actually have to produce it and turn it?
Yeah, corn actually comes in pretty dry, so we can store it almost indefinitely. I mean, it will degrade slightly over time, just as it continues to dry out and shrink. But we're pretty. We go through our corn probably. We keep about a week's supply on hand. Is kind of general what we have on hand. I think we have about 300,000 bushels out there right now, which is about a week's supply for us.
Do you have anything that does degrade quickly that you have to make sure that you're like watching carefully the stock you have because it'll get
Quickly, within a month period, no, we don't. I mean, most of the stuff we have we'll store for periods of time.
So do you know how many levels are in your supply chain? Like how many different suppliers that they go through and going to your customers as well?
Like how many from when it starts from your suppliers until it's finished, like the end product, I guess, the end process.
Well, it goes from on the corn end, it goes from the farm, probably to the elevator to us, and then from us it goes through our process, and then it goes to our ethanol customers, and they put it in their tanks, the terminal, they blend it into gasoline, they distribute it to their retail locations. So that's the supply chain on the corn side. On the ingredient side, there's probably several steps there that I'm not aware of that on how they.
Yeah, on the ethanol side, I'd say there's 6.
6.
When it comes to the consumer, so by the time from the field to the consumer is probably 6 steps.
Do you know what type of enzymes you use?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we use a company called Novozymes. They're actually a foreign company. They have locations or U.S. headquarters in North Carolina and supply or production of our enzyme supply in Nebraska. So we have 2 different enzymes we use in our process, and we buy both of them from them.
Okay. And so they have a branch based in America that you buy from, or you buy it from overseas?
Yeah, their fuels, if you call it their biofuels division, is located in North Carolina where the headquarters is. And then they built a production plant in Nebraska several years ago that all kind of feeds the Midwest, where most of the ethanol plants are for all of the enzyme needs. And they're getting into yeast now as well. So
Okay.
we're looking at them for yeast as well. Yeah.
So everything that you order, does it come through on a train or a truck?
Primarily truck.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't get any, besides corn, we don't get anything else inbound on rail.
How long does it take to receive everything by the time that you order it?
Some
makes
of the
sense.
stuff that we can get in a day, we receive corn every day here, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. The other stuff coming out of Nebraska or coming out of the Midwest, can take several days, but most of the stuff we can get here well within a week.
Out of curiosity, so when you're looking at the prices of the commodities and stuff, trying to figure out when you should buy corn when it's cheapest, do you have like a financial team looking into that, or is that part of your supply chain? You have
Well, there's two pieces to buying and pricing corn. So number one, you're buying the physical corn, which is you're not necessarily pricing it right now. You know, you're buying the basis, if you will, which is kind of the spread from the Midwest is what it is really. And so, like in Colorado, you know, we might be buying corn for 10 over Chicago price, right? Well, you're not pricing it at that point, so that's a decision you have to make as managing your company. Is okay. Do we have a margin now where it makes sense to lock in corn because we have the corn bought, but we don't have it priced yet, so we can go out and price it as we sell ethanol, you know what I mean, and lock in a crush spread. And we certainly do that, but we primarily price week to week with corn as we receive it and grind it. And so the other inbound products, they're, like I said, under contract, so most of them have that contracted price. It doesn't fluctuate. You know, that's negotiable when contracts come up, and so the corn's the big one. I mean, it's our biggest expense, and it's the thing we have to manage the most. And so we're very cautious and conservative on how we price that corn to make sure we're not leaving it open-ended. By what I mean by that is buying it and pricing it right away without selling the ethanol against it. Well, you're completely exposed to the risks of the market at that point. And so we like to, if we're going to lock in something, we like to price corn, buy gas, and sell ethanol. Those are the big kind of three that will really get there's some fluctuating costs in there, but that'll get your margin pretty much locked in.
And then for your CO2 products,
Mhm.
are you receiving the CO2 or are you guys creating CO2?
So we create CO2, you'll see fermentation just naturally, just part of the biological process. And so we don't actually operate the CO2 plant, we supply it.
Okay.
The CO2 plant is sitting right to our south, right here. You'll see it sitting there with the big insulated tanks. But so we actually send CO2 from our fermentation that we capture over to them in a pipe,
Okay.
and they process it into liquid CO2. They condense it into liquid CO2, and then they use some of that liquid CO2 to make dry ice as well. And so they're making liquid and then going to dry ice with it, or selling, or just transporting the liquid out of here.
So your CO2 is a byproduct of your process to make the ethanol?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and as is, we like to call them co-products because they're important to our business model. But the cattle feed that you'll see out there, the syrup that goes into that cattle feed as well, and some of it's sold separately. The corn oil, which I'm not sure if we're loading a rail car today or not, but you'll see where it's loaded out there, and you'll see the corn oil processing skid inside the building, and the distiller's grains are all coming from that kernel of corn, and so we pay attention to every one of them because it makes the model work.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about the discount schedule on our corn, and if it doesn't look great.
Sure. So quality, obviously we're after the starch in the corn pretty much, and so we have a testing when the truck comes in. You guys probably see it today. When the truck comes in, we probe it, we sample it in two different areas in the truck to get an idea of the quality of the corn that's coming in. We test it for moisture, heat damage, insects, test weight. Are the primary ones that we test for and discount for. If it's really bad stuff, we'll reject it. We won't even let them unload. And that's because of, if it's really degraded, then that means the access to the starch is really restricted, which means our yields are going to be really bad, which means that if we put that in the plant, we're wasting a lot of money processing that to get less out of it. And so that's why we have the schedule to discount. We discount up to a certain point where we just say we're not taking it. So we do accept it. It makes sense financially to accept it at a lower cost up to a point, and then we reject it completely if it's really bad stuff, which doesn't happen too often. It happens, but not very often.
So if it doesn't pass like one aspect of
Correct.
your list, you would still take it?
Yeah, if it's out of our moisture range, or if it's out of our test weight range, or if it's infected with bugs, it's not coming in.